My name is Rafael Pineyro. I'm the councilman here in the city of Doral, but I also have the privilege to represent San Ignacio University. So I want to welcome you not only to the university, but I want to welcome you to our great city of Doral, the best city in Miami-Dade County. And there's no doubt that Doral is becoming one of the most popular cities, not only in South Florida, but now pretty much state, now nationwide, because our dear neighbor and resident, as you already know, President Trump has a property here in Doral. So Doral, every time that something is mentioned about the president coming to town or hosting something, Doral is actually on the map. So we're excited. Good things are happening in South Florida. The FIFA World Cup. The G, well, there's another G. Is the G20 in December is going to be hosted here in Doral, by the way, with all the presidents. But there's also another G summit. They're calling it the G7. It's happening next weekend here in Doral as well with the presidents from Latin America. So again, a lot of things are happening in the area. That the PGA is coming back to Doral in April, which is another big deal. I mean, for the first time in 10 years, we're hosting the PGA back in South Florida. So there's no doubt that South Florida is becoming the place to be, the place to do businesses. But at the same time, I'm happy that we're having this conversation here today because we all need lawyers, right? We all need attorneys, like it or not. It's like a doctor. We all need a doctor. We need a lawyer. So, and I hope that you all have one. It's my pleasure to welcome you to San Ignacio. There are a lot of good things happening here at the university as well. I know Sabrina is going to talk about it in a few minutes, but I wanted to welcome you officially, not only to San Ignacio, but of course to our great city of Doral. And we're here to work together. You all have a business or represent a business, or you work for a company. As a city, we need everything as well. So keep that in mind. It's not that because, sometimes you represent a government entity, we don't need anything. We do. We do a lot of businesses with a lot of the local companies here in South Florida. So keep that in mind because sometimes it's a good way to also increase your business opportunities. Having said that, I wanted to introduce Sabrina from our admissions department.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to San Ignacio University. I'm Sabrina from the admissions department. I just wanted to pass by very quickly just to let you know about the programs that we offer here at the university. We offer the ESO program for the English learners. We offer the associates, bachelor's, master's, and doctorates. We have the academic year starting on May 11th. And for the ESO program, we start April 6th. So for that, for the associates, we offer in marketing, business, international relations, and hospitality management. And if you guys are interested in any of the programs, just spending your knowledge, you can always come here outside. I'll be waiting for you guys to give you a more personalized information for thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Let me introduce myself. I'm Sergio Cabanas. I'm the founder of the TCC, the Cabanas Connection, and owner and founder of the Cabanas Law Firm and divorce lawyers, and we specialize in family law. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Puerto Rico to a Cuban family that escaped the very dangerous, for us anyway, Castro regime. My father had to come here. Needless to say, he came here and started cutting onions at the Fontainebleau Hotel. Not a very good way to start off. When he became a U.S. citizen, we still have a letter from then President Jimmy Carter, which congratulated, I think presidents back then actually signed letters welcoming people to citizenship and congratulating them. So because of all that, they instilled in us the importance of education. They said that, government and people can take things away from you, your belongings, your wealth, but they can't take away your knowledge. Education is a big premium in our family. So Without further ado, I want to introduce Yetzabet. She's from the Cabanas Connection. She'll tell you a little bit more about that, and then we'll get started.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Yetzabet and I am the Business Development Manager here at the Cabanas Connection. So for starters, we are the Cabanas Connection, and what the Cabanas Connection is a nonprofit organization or a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're dedicated to empowering individuals. And then we also have the legal support, which is our helpline. So anybody that you know, if it has any matter, it doesn't matter, you give us a call to our helpline, and then we'll connect you to 4 different attorneys that could help with your case. And then we also provide scholarships. So we are a nonprofit, so we also need funding. We ask for grants, we ask for donations, and with the money that we do give scholarships to people that want to become an attorney, that aspire to be an attorney, but that they just don't have the funds to, and that's what we do. And then a little did you know, so according to Lovick and Jewell, it's estimated that around 12 million lawsuits are filed against small businesses annually, and many of those involve in contract claims or commercial disputes not fully understand what their legal protections need. So basically, a lot of small businesses are getting sued because they don't have the right contracts. And a lot of them think like, oh, well, it's a financial thing. We can't afford an attorney, but sometimes you can't, right? It's like, if you're getting sued, what are you gonna do? After you're getting sued, you have to find that money somewhere because you gotta figure it out. So it's better to have those contracts in place before it gets to that point. Attorney Cueto's here today, so if you have questions, please reach out to him. And yeah, and we're here to help in any way.
By a show of hands, who here has heard the old saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? Nobody. Well, it's actually Ben Franklin. And Ben Franklin, who's one of the founding founders of this country, once said that it's so much better to prevent disaster than to clean up after the disaster. And he said it, and this became a very famous quote in American culture, because at that time he was referring to fire drills and how important it was to avoid fires in buildings, which is much better than dealing with the disaster, loss of life, loss of properties afterwards. So that's what we're doing here. And that saying became, just caught fire, it became very popular and still is used today to describe that. And not just for fire drills, but for life in general, right? If there's issues and problems that can come down the pike that you can avoid and prevent, boy, that's so much better than to prevent and avoid problems like litigation, problems with contracts, disputes, and then to deal with it in court and have the stress of litigation, the cost of litigation, all the problems and loss of money. So whether you have vendor agreements, in business, partnership agreements, employment contracts, we all have contracts in some way, shape, or form. One poorly written clause can actually cost you thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. There's businesses that are dealing with it with millions of dollars, and we see that in the news every day. So today's workshop, as you guessed it, is about prevention. So in business law, the goal is simple: protect your business before a dispute can happen. And Attorney Cueto can speak to us about that. A quick disclaimer, please remember today's presentation is for general informational purposes only. It's not legal advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship and not a substitute for a private consultation with an attorney. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Attorney Santiago Cueto. He is one of the few board-certified international attorneys that specializes in international business law. So please help me welcome.
Thank you. Anybody have an iPhone here?
Yeah.
Right, I think we've all signed contracts, right? Now I think everybody said yes. You check that box where it says I agree to the terms, because all you want is to get that iPhone working. You don't care what it says, right? But buried deep, if you actually click on it and you look at the terms and conditions, it's about 17 pages long. And you have no idea what you just signed. You've all signed an arbitration clause to arbitrate any dispute with Apple in California. I'm not sure if you guys knew that, right? Did anybody assume that a dispute would be resolved here in Florida? Well, most contracts with big corporations work like that. They're never in your favor. And that's why contracts are so important to understand. So today I'm going to go over a couple of things. Why contracts matter, the cost of a handshake deal. The next thing we're going to go over are the types and essential elements in the contract. You miss one of those and you don't have a contract. We'll go over key clauses and protections, the must-have provisions in your contract to protect yourself, the common mistakes to avoid, and when to call a lawyer. All right, so why do contracts matter? Well, as Sergio alluded to earlier, 60% of small business disputes involve contract issues. Something as simple as what color or what price I wanted to paint your house, or something more complex about the model of an iPhone I thought I was going to get, right? And $65,000 is the average cost of a contract dispute for small businesses. Now that number, I think lately has really increased. I think they can exceed $100,000. A dispute over $50,000 can easily be double the amount that the contract is worth. And people lose sight of that. People get very entrenched into their positions and they lose sight of what a reasonable settlement looks like. They don't care how much it costs to litigate the case. They just want to win. But at the end of the day, when they sometimes lose in court, they'll look back and wish they had looked at the case with clear eyes. And the good thing about a contract is it greatly reduces your exposure to risk. All the expectations are set, everything is defined, everybody knows where they lie in that contract. And that's why, with those expectations, the contracts really work well to reduce the risks. Now, I talked about the handshake problem, which I call the earthquake problem because of the problems it causes. Now, without a contract, you have no proof of agreed terms. You get into the he said, she said dispute. Now, what do you think at the end of the day when you go to trial, the only thing the court is left with is to judge your credibility. So simple little lies along the way or in a deposition, the other side's gonna latch onto that. See, he lied there, and he lied there, so he's probably lying now. And that's the only way. Without a contract, that's the best way, not a perfect way, but that's the best way we have for a judge or jury to evaluate your case. And how do you enforce a handshake deal? Again, how do you prove it? What evidence? Well, nowadays we have text messages. Those actually count. They're good. But the other side has their own text messages and their own emails. Everything gets put into the pot so that the jury and the judge are now left with kind of piecing each other what this person meant by this email and by this text message. So it gets very convoluted. And you also have unlimited liability exposure. There's no cap on the amount of damages you have with the handshake. And there's no exit strategy defined with the handshake problem. What happens when the contract ends? What happens when somebody wants to leave a company? What happens when a partner breaches a contract? There's no exit strategy with the handshake deal. You have to probably go to court to resolve it. And again, it's very expensive. Now we get into the beauty of a contract. It organizes everything. It keeps everything nice and tidy. All the expectations in a perfect world are included in the contract. You have clear and documented expectations. The who, the what, the when, the where, the how much, what color, what size, what model. You have the defined scope and deliverables. When am I going to get it? What am I expecting? What does it come with? And does the Apple come with software or any apps built in? It's legally enforceable. You have a signed contract by two parties. You can walk that into court. And if you're on the right side, successfully sue the other side for breaching that contract. You don't have that with a handshake. It's not as clear. And you also have limited liability of caps. Say, for instance, you were supposed to deliver flowers for a wedding and there were the wrong types of flowers. And the bride got all upset because the flowers were the wrong color and you ruined the wedding and everything. And she's going to ask for consequential damages, emotional distress. Well, guess what? She's not getting any of that. She's just going to be left with the value of the flowers because built into that contract was a limitation of liability. All those consequential damages, it's unfortunate, but they're not going to be included at the end of the day in a trial award. And in the contract, you have exit and termination clauses, very elegantly crafted provisions. How do we leave the contract? What happens if one of us doesn't like the product that we got? What are the dispute resolution mechanisms in there? Everything is nice and tidy to resolve the issue without having to go to court. And now these are the main types of business contracts. You have service agreements, and those define the scope, the timeline, and payment for services rendered. We have employment contracts, we have NDAs and non-competes, we have lease and rental contracts, sales and purchase contracts, and partnership agreements. So above all these types of contracts, you need your foundational contracts of your operating agreement if you have an LLC, and you want to have your bylaws if you're a corporation. Those are your foundational governing documents of your corporation or your LLC. These are the essential elements of a valid contract. First, you have to have an offer. One party proposes specific terms. I'll buy your car for $10,000. That's a very simple offer. The other side, number two, is acceptance. The other side says, okay, I will agree to purchase your car for $10,000. And the third one is called what's consideration. It's the money being exchanged. What's being exchanged for the car? Here, the consideration is money. And number four, you need the capacity. And that may make sense. It may seem logical, but you'd be surprised what happens when people who are minors or lack the mental capacity enter into a contract. So you have to be over 18, of course, to enter into a contract. And number five, it's got to be legal. And number six, mutual assent. Both parties have to agree. It's called meeting of the minds. We agree that we're exchanging in this transaction of buying a car for $10,000. That right there is a contract. Now these are the clauses that every contract should have. And this is, again, to avoid problems. The more detail a contract has, the least likely they're going to run into problems down the road. So the scope of work, you clearly define what services or products are being delivered, including the milestones, the deadlines, and specific deliverables. The payment terms. Am I going to pay through Venmo? Am I going to do a Zelle? Am I going to do cash? How am I going to pay for it? You need to specify the amounts, when you're going to pay for it, the accepted methods, penalties if you don't pay, and for the businesses, you want invoicing procedures and include currency and tax responsibility, especially when you're doing business abroad. That's another big issue, especially now with the currency fluctuations happening so much, particularly in Argentina and in Europe versus the US dollar. You also want to spell out the term and termination. Define the contract's duration, the renewal conditions, and how either party can exit, and include notice periods of what happens to work in progress. And you also, it's always good to have confidentiality. You want to protect sensitive business information shared during the relationship, define what's confidential, and the duration of the obligations and the exceptions. And then you also need limitations of liability, and this caps potential damages, kind of like that wedding situation I talked about earlier. And this protects both parties from disproportionate financial exposure. You also want to have indemnification. You want to define who bears responsibility when third-party claims arise. And this is very important, dispute resolution. This is often buried in the very back pages of your contract. They choose how disagreements will be handled. Mediation, arbitration, litigation, and this includes the jurisdiction, the governing law, and the venue. And the next key clause to include is the intellectual property. You want clarity of ownership of any work product, inventions, or creative output. And you want to specify work for hire status and license grants. All right, so common contract mistakes. Using generic templates, it's a nice place to get started to see what kind of, what an employment contract looks like, what an LLC agreement looks like. Look through it and get familiar with it. But please, it costs almost nothing to hire an attorney to just review it. Now, the second contract mistake that people make is vague language. Terms like reasonable or timely. Those lead to disputes. You have to be specific with the numbers and the dates. I want X delivered by X, by Y date. That's far better than saying, oh, give it to me next week. Number three, skipping the fine print. As I just went over, those jurisdiction clause, limitation of liability clauses, and indemnification clauses, those can go against you as well. So you always want to look at those things. And any verbal modifications. So let's say after you enter into a contract, somebody says, no, I don't want 100 of them. I want 50. I can't afford 100. You want to make sure that's incorporated into the contract. Because guess what? Later on, when you deliver the 100, the person's going to say, we agreed to 50. Like, no, where is that in the contract? The contract rules, the court doesn't care. It's the contract language. And the fifth common mistake of a contract is no exit strategy. Failing to include a termination clause And that can leave you trapped in an underperforming relationship. And I see this a lot in partnership agreements, where one partner is contributing to the partnership and the other one is just staying at home all day long, not contributing. And when there's no exit or termination clause in there for underperformance, guess what? You're now stuck with a partner forever who's underperforming and not doing their job. And also ignoring state law. Number 6, Florida has specific requirements, especially for non-competes, leases, and contractor agreements. So there was a big thing last year with the FTC was going to strike what's called non-compete agreements across the country. Make sure when you have an employment agreement that you read the non-competes because they will be enforced. Now, the key provisions of a non-compete, they have to be limited in time and scope. It can't say you can't work forever in Florida in the insurance industry. It needs to say for a period of 2 years and within 5 miles of our office, you cannot work. And this gets me into number 1, the Florida specific considerations. Yeah, so we just went over that. And also e-signing stuff. We all e-sign, DocuSign, those are valid, right? And now the great thing about them is we have a document stamp on those. When it was signed, who signed it, when they received the email, it's all trackable. And that I think is great for everybody. Now you've proven that you did in fact sign it, you did read everything, and even up to the minute of when you signed it. I think that's great for everybody. Now, if you're in the construction industry, you're a contractor or developer, the construction lien laws are really, really strict. You need contractors must send notices within specific timeframes, and construction contracts need specific attention to protect their payment rights. If you don't do it on time and you have a job, they didn't pay you, guess what? You're not gonna get paid. I've seen people make that terrible mistake over and over again. Because they missed it by a day, they're not gonna get paid on a $100,000 job. They learned the hard way. And Florida is a very business-friendly jurisdiction. Choice of Florida law in Miami-Dade County venue is often advantageous for business owners. As you can see, all these billionaires that are moving here, rather than California, it's for a reason, right? We have no state income tax. We're a business-friendly environment. They don't have to be worried about being overregulated like they are in California. I think the past month alone, I think Mark Zuckerberg, both Google people have purchased properties here in Miami. All right, so here are some smart negotiation strategies when you're dealing with contracts or into a contract. Start with your template. Wherever you got it from, that's cool. Just remember, the party who writes it, they're stuck with it. If there's a term that's unfavorable or ambiguous, it's going to be construed against you. And number 2, know your walk-away point. Determine your non-negotiables before you sit down. Document them privately, right? So make sure you keep an ongoing list of your contract negotiations on the side as proof that these points were discussed with the other party. And you want to focus on interests, not positions. You want to understand why the other side wants what they want, and you want creative solutions. And again, get everything in writing. If it's discussed at the table, it goes into the contract. No exceptions, no matter how small. And when you redline these days, how many people have reviewed a contract or any document on Word or word processing? You go to track changes, and you do all that? Mm-hmm. Well, make sure you put the comments under as you're going through the contract and revising it. Make sure that you put the notes of why you like this, why you don't, what needs to be changed. All that is going to be evidence at the end of the day. And digital contracts in e-signatures. Now, DocuSign, I think, is the most widely, is the most widely used. And again, they verify the signer identity, they maintain audit trails, they store signed copies securely, and they use trusted platforms. And you want to check the Florida rules. But Florida, we have the Uniform Electronic Transaction Act, and that is enforceable here in Florida. So, and that's far more convenient than going to people's offices and having to sign in person. So make sure you use a valid e-document platform. All right, when to call a lawyer. You can often handle simple service agreements. Basic NDAs. NDAs are non-disclosure agreements from templates. Standard vendor contracts, invoice terms and payment schedules, and routine contract renewals. All this stuff is kind of basic. It's always good to get an attorney just to kind of give it a second look. All right, so here are the key takeaways. Every business relationship deserves a written contract. You're really left exposed if you do not have one. Disputes arise when you don't have one. We like to trust people We have a bias towards trust, just as human beings, but some people take advantage of that to your detriment. Be sure you have a written contract to memorialize what you've agreed upon. And in those contracts, you want to be specific. Vague terms are the enemy of enforceability and trust. I had $1 million case on a commercial lease one day where it was a guy who was about 75 years old. This was his last hurrah in the retail space. He was very, very successful. And he was sued for breaching a lease on this new commercial space. And he was so concerned that his legacy would be ruined. He'd have to file for bankruptcy. All these years he's worked, and now at 75 years old, all that work would amount to nothing if he has to file for bankruptcy. Well, we were able to look at that commercial lease, and specifically, it was the very front page. It was the start date provision. It was so ambiguous and convoluted that it could be read one of many ways. And the court threw that case out simply because that term of the start date was read, could be read one of two ways. Well, thankfully, the case got thrown out and my client went on. He didn't have to file for bankruptcy and went on to be a very, very successful person. And that was just based on one clause of a contract on $1 million lease. It was a 10-year lease.
Oh.
And you want to know Florida's unique rules of non-competes, liens, and e-signatures. And you want to invest in legal review for high-stake contracts. It's a lot cheaper than litigation. And you want to build a contract management system to track dates, obligations, and renewals. And again, calendar that date of renewal. When the lease renews, when your whatever download that you did for your software or the partnership agreement, anything, you need to track that because it'll come up. And by the way, if you have an LLC or a corporation, you need to file your annual reports every year by May 1st. Just calendar that. That's a big mistake people make when they set up a company. They overlook that. What happens if you miss that? Well, you get a big penalty of $500 or so. $400? Yeah, $400. And so a lot of us have found out the hard way. And so, and if you miss it, if you miss paying that, in September they'll dissolve your company.
Wow.
So always just calendar that.
But opening, but they charge you an extra fee.
Yeah, I mean some people just form new LLCs because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
They just started anyway.
You lose all that track record.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
If you have a DMV number, exactly. It all gets reset. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see is people not calendaring. And the state of Florida will inundate you with these emails. Hey, it's due, it's due, it's due. And it takes like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Check. $138 or something. File it, you're done.
Yep.
Okay? All right, questions?
So you said we shouldn't, like for small invoice sort of contracts, we don't necessarily need to have a lawyer look at those. There was one time I heard this tattoo artist who did a tattoo on one of these really famous artists, really famous actors, used that tattoo in a movie, and then the artist sued the production for using their intellectual property.
Interesting.
So,
I think I read about that.
so like at what point does intellectual property belong to the person who consumed that service and belong to the company, like a tattoo artist for something simple like that?
Well, I think it depends on the design. If it's a person's own design that they bought to that tattoo or artist to memorialize on it, then I think it would arguably be the person's design who came up with it. Or if they walk into a tattoo shop and I think they have these the displays you can pick. I'm not sure who owns that, whether the tattoo, like a stock photo thing, they pay a subscription and they get so many tattoos. I'm not sure that would really work. So it would depend on the source of that tattoo. Like where did it come from? Now, if it's his own creation, I think that there's a good argument that that's his own, right? The person who walks in to get a tattoo.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if I have a small business, but I have no idea what contracts I need, and I don't have another partner that I need to have a contract against, if I call you, do you do like a business evaluation of what contracts I need, or would I need to know what contracts I need to be for?
No, if you tell us what business and what industry you're in, we'll tell you what contracts you need. That's our initial strategy session in our consult. We'll go over that.
Okay.
And see what exactly you need. If you're a construction company, it's going to be different than if you have a retail store.
Correct.
I have another question. So we have a very big Latin demographic down here in Miami. So if I don't understand a contract that I'm reading, or maybe I just don't understand English very well, what should I do as a non-English speaker when trying to
Hire, there's plenty of Spanish-speaking attorneys here. Santiago handles all our Spanish-speaking clients. Native language, no problem. I mean, that's what you should do. And again, avoid using the chapter T. The translation is not the same when you plug in words in the translator, it's completely different.
Yeah.
So you can't rely on that. Olivia knows that, right?
Yeah.
The legal terms are completely different.
And then navigating the legal process too. The whole process is in English. So
Right.
like,
I mean, they just changed the driver's license test to English only in Miami-Dade County.
Oh,
English only.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it started this March 6th or something.
If you're starting a business, how do you choose which corporate entity to use? C Corp, S, sole proprietorship?
Well, it depends on your goals and what you have in mind. LLCs are usually the easiest and most flexible. You can convert those to corporations later. Now, if you want to be more advanced and get IPOs and take on investors, that's when you need a corporation because they want to buy shares, right? They want to be invested in the company. What you have in LLCs are what they call membership interests. That doesn't work, for more advanced venture capital firms. But you can mature from an LLC and change certainly to a corporation. And if you want to have a partnership, it depends more so on your particular tax situation. And if it's for a limited purpose for this limited venture of developing a building, for instance, your joint ventures or JVs are formed just specific to projects. So that's one way we would do maybe a limited joint venture for that. But generally, LLCs are the best place to start. They're most flexible, they're very, very easy to deal with, and they're very easy to navigate. And very little, in terms of compliance, corporations, you need board minutes, you need stock certificates, there's a whole bunch of formalities. But for either of those, this is another tidbit, you gotta keep business and personal separate, right? If you don't do that, they're gonna pierce what's called the pierce the corporate veil. And if somebody slips and falls in your store and you're an LLC, usually limited liability company means just that, limited liability. But if you're using your LLC as a piggy bank, they're gonna pierce the corporate veil and now they can sue you individually for that slip and fall because you've not followed corporate formalities. You need to be sure everything is followed. Now, LLCs are far easier than corporations to manage the formalities. So I would think that that's the best place to start with an LLC.
I have another question. So we had that same website predicament where we hired a website SEO vendor and they owned the IP and they wouldn't give it to us. We were locked in a contract, and even at the end, we had to fight them to get that from them because we paid money. I don't know, I felt like it should have been our property, but I didn't read the fine print. So for anybody else in the room has a website through an so what would we do in that situation? You said you had to go to court and get that from them.
Yeah, well, I think I waited it out in that instance because it wasn't much longer. But you can go to court, right? If they refuse to do it, you would have to go to court. First send them a demand letter. Hey, we're going to sue you if you don't give us our property back. And if they don't do that, then the only legal recourse is to go to court and fight it out. But yeah, that's a very, very sneaky way that they can catch
Tough
you.
enough.
I want to kind of piggyback on his question. So since Florida is a no-fault state, so how does that impact liability? So let's say for Sebastian's case, that person could still be sued, or does that
Well, no
not
fault. I
apply
think it pertains more to
in
car
business?
accidents.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that doesn't really apply in business law?
Yeah,
You
it
can just
doesn't.
sue for anything?
Right. Oh yeah, you can sue for anything,
Okay.
anytime, anyone.
Okay.
We had the first day of law school. They literally had a case of this guy John Doe versus Mickey Mouse and the devil, only to show us that you can file. Anybody can file against anything for any time, but whether it survives a motion to dismiss stage is something different. Of course, it gets dismissed, but I tell that all the time. Anybody can sue at any time for anything. It'll likely get dismissed if it's one of these novelty cases. But yeah, and it's there forever in the court record.
Even after you finish a project, let's say for construction, you finish an entire kitchen and then it's completely done, and a year later, somebody's like, you know what? I don't like how this cabinet is done. Can you change it? And obviously, when the contract is done after a year, because they were ready.
Well, if it was in the
can they still sue you?
If it was in the contract and they didn't follow the directions. In other words, the size of the door was different. They were supposed to install, or the finish was different. It was supposed to be Italian marble, and got some other marble. You can sue for that.
But after a year of use, or is
Well,
there
they're all
like a
statute of
certain-
limitations, right? So once you pass 4 years of statute of limitations on a breach of contract, you gotta do it within a certain amount of time. Why? Because people move. Evidence changes, gets destroyed. They want you to move on your rights super fast, and it benefits you. You don't wanna sit in your rights and wait 4 years.
So there's 4 years. of-
4 years for a written,
Okay.
for a written contract, and 3 for a, 5 for a, I get them mixed,
Five for a written
Yeah.
contract.
and then oral is not considered as strong, so that can be, you have less time for that.
Do you ever deal with situations where people like plagiarize signatures, like if you don't remember signing something?
Yeah, they can do that. Yeah, unfortunately,
How
we
do you
actually,
fight against that?
we in one case recently, we hired a handwriting expert to do that. They used Canva. Are people familiar with Canva?
Yeah.
They used Canva to submit a document to the court. And that's the first time I've ever seen Canva being used to generate a document for a court. We all use Adobe or something like that. So because I right-clicked on that document, they left the properties intact. Remember I told you to scrub?
Yeah.
You were metadata? Well, they left it intact. We right-clicked it, and it showed it was produced by Canva. And then we're like, They forged the signature, or they manipulated it. And we're able to show the judge that that signature was in fact forged with our handwriting expert, just by virtue of using Canva. Who uses Canva to generate a document? A legal document. You had a question, sir?
Yes, thank you. Just to be sure, if I have some agreement with getting not employees, contractors from out of the country, let's say Latin America, any problem? Basically, the Florida laws are the ones to be applied.
I'm sorry, if you want to sue a contractor from another country,
Yes, or if he has some issue.
as long as there's a Florida connection, let's say that contractor is from let's say the Dominican Republic and does work here in Florida and does a bad job, you can sue that contractor here in Florida for the bad job he did here, even though he's based in the Dominican Republic. That takes longer, for instance, for service of process. There's something called the Hague Convention where you have to serve the person with the papers in the Dominican Republic, and there's a process that takes some time. We're actually doing that right now in the Dominican Republic with another client, another issue we have in the office. And it takes about, just to serve them with process, usually it takes about 6 months. So international takes longer, but you can certainly do it as long as there's a nexus with Florida.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
What's your advice on having like a mother company? So that like, let's say if somebody sue you or something, like you have your LLC is under.
Oh, like a parent, a subsidiary,
Sorry,
or an LLC, and yeah, you can have a holding company holding an LLC, and that's a good practice. You want to layer protection. The more layers you add, the better protection you can have. The only difference is it's going to require more compliance on your part to make sure that you're following all the formalities of keeping them separate. That's all. As long as you can do that, that's good, and we call that stacking.
I have a question.
Sure.
Well, we spoke a little bit, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
share with you. My husband and I own a theater with ADT, this is our theater, right? So basically we work with homeowners where we install camera security systems. And they have to sign this contract for 36 months. Sometimes, of course, there is a percentage that they don't pay this, right? And of course, ADT will charge back what they paid to me. And so I want to know what procedure can we address for them to pay me because they sign a legal contract.
Right. Oh, that's a tough one, right? Because you're not going to get your commission because
Exactly.
they didn't pay. Well, yeah, I guess I'd have to look at the individual circumstance, read the contract to see the context of it. But yeah, it doesn't seem fair that, just because a person didn't pay, that obviously you don't get paid, but you got the 36, you got that contract,
Exactly.
right?
So-
You got them a full-term contract, and now you're stuck with somebody who's not fulfilling that contract, right? And you can't sue them because it's with ADT, right? So it's really at the client level.
Yeah. What we have been doing is that we send like a demand letter.
Yeah.
But sometimes people, they don't really care about it. So I don't know if we can do something, like,
Well-
of course, I wanna go and do
Yeah.
a consultation.
Well, practically speaking, you can send a demand letter, but it needs to be on an attorney letterhead. People
Yeah.
will not pay attention to you otherwise. Having any attorney on the letterhead is gonna make a big change in their perception of the action you're willing to take to enforce that contract. If it's just you, it's just you. And it's with everybody. Unfortunately, yeah, letterhead goes a long way to resolving, it wakes them up.
Exactly, okay.
And what we do for larger corporations, we'll send it to different departments within the corporation so that a bunch of people at the same time
Got it. Okay.
get notice,
That's amazing.
right? You set off alarm bells, like I got this, and it's a FedEx. FedEx has a way to it, gravitas. We don't send a letter, we send FedExes. Simultaneously, I got a FedEx, I got a FedEx. Soon you have a bunch of people, did you get it? I got it, okay, let's fix the problem. We want to create chaos internally in the organization.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to do a consult with you guys. 'Cause
Yeah,
I-
and we're very good at causing chaos for you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Santiago. Very informative.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope you all learned, I still learned
Yeah.
a lot of good information, good tips and advice. So any other words?
Yes, I'm gonna introduce you guys to Maite. She's from Hispanic Community. She's the director of Miami-Dade. So they have a program where they encourage you and they walk you through these steps. And then you can call, obviously, our attorney, Cueto, to check on your contract. So she's gonna come and introduce that program, and then we'll end it there.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Maida Martinez. I proudly serve as the director for Miami-Dade Initiatives with Hispanic Unity of Florida. Hispanic Unity of Florida is a nonprofit organization dedicated to making your life better, to help you not just survive, but thrive and achieve an American dream, becoming productive, self-efficient, and engaged in community. So there's a handful of programs that we offer. We offer career and technical education programs, citizenship programs and immigration services, access to food, help with taxes. But the program that I'm here to speak with you all today is our Level Up Center for Entrepreneurship. So we offer services for entrepreneurs either that are aspiring, just starting out, or if you're 2, 5, 10, 15 years into your business and you want to see that grow. So with our Level Up Center, we have 2 tracks. So we have the launch track and the up track. With the launch track, if like it's been mentioned, if you have that idea for a business and you don't know where to start, come and talk to us. We're more than happy to guide you through that process a little bit. We host educational workshops. The other one is the up track. So with the up track, this is for business owners who already have 1-2 years worth of revenue or more. We work with entrepreneurs who have 20 years worth of revenue. So we do have a mentorship cohort. We've actually just started the first cohort of the year last week on Wednesday, but we'll be hosting another cohort in the fall, and we would love to have you participate in that cohort if you so choose. And we match you up with a mentor who has extensive experience in the business, in whatever business you may have. So either sales, restaurants, locations, insurance, whatever it may be, we're more than happy to match you up with someone who has that experience. The other piece of the Level Up Center that we offer is our yearly summit. So for the first time in Miami-Dade, we are hosting a Entrepreneur Summit. It will be hosted on Friday, April 17th at the Doral Cultural Center, not too far away from here. And we invite every single one of you in this room to join us on that day. It's going to be an exciting day of connecting, growing, and learning, sharing. We have an exciting lineup, anything that can help take your business to the next level. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and scan the QR code to register. It is free to attend. Everything that we offer for entrepreneurs is a free resource to the community. So we're really excited to present this to you today, and hope to see you at our summit.
One of the resources was Hispanic Unity. So I'm very familiar with Hispanic Unity. In fact, Iris went with Hispanic Unity and Adriana in the back. We actually know each other from Hispanic Unity since we were really small. So they have a lot of great programs, and I'm very familiar with what they do. So check check them out, guys. If you haven't heard about it. Thank you, Attorney Cueto, and thank you all for coming here. It was really early, and I know a lot of you guys drive from a lot of different places, so thank you for putting your booth, thank you for the support, and once again, if you guys need anything from me, please give me a call, and I'm always an email or call away. Thank you.